I am on a quest. I want to find out how to make software and hardware perform at their peak. I want to know how to make applications faster and more efficient. And while I'm at it, I want to have a little fun. Don't think I can do it? Just watch me. I'm Scott Moore, and this is the Performance Tour.
It's 2023 and it's time for the Performance Tour. I'm Scott Moore. I've already hit the road and looks like I'm in the middle of nowhere looking for the best barbecue and those who understand that performance engineering is so important to today's modern IT. Our first episode is all about a conversation that myself and my good buddy James Pulley had recently in the Perfmobile as we were riding around about load testing tools, the languages behind them, and some of the feature sets some have and some don't, and our thoughts about them in general. Let's take a look. So James, it's really good to have you back in the Perfmobile.
Yeah, I'm in the Joe Colantonio chair. It's kind of cool.
Shout out to Joe.
Yeah.
James, what I wanted to talk about today was I see a lot of newer load testing vendors using JavaScript as the language for creating their business processes and their scripts. And this is interesting to me because having done scripting with a language like C, low-level languages, and others with C#, it's interesting to see JavaScript becoming the de facto language for creating load testing scripts.
So, choosing JavaScript, I think, is a different animal entirely, because now you're narrowing it to web specific. And it seems like the tools that have adopted JavaScript, for the most part, are pointing at developers using the tool. Now, there are some examples like Neolode. Neolode has a JavaScript interface for its scripting language, and it's not specifically targeted at developers, but it's used highly by developers, and developers know JavaScript, and developers in the web domain specifically know JavaScript. So what you're doing is you're taking a tool which is fairly generic, cross-platform, portable, which has a lot of attributes of getting out of the way of the test itself, and now you're constricting it. Your first generation constriction was Java. We're going to constrict it only to working with Java technologies, Java protocols, and Java interfaces. And then you're constricting it even further. We're going to do web-specific domain technologies. And the symptom here, the symptom is really the shift from testers to developers doing the test. That's why I said it's kind of a bad idea, and it's a symptom. And if you look at these tools, a lot of them are kind of immature in terms of capabilities as well. You can see where they're targeted at the developers. Developers only want to understand response time. This tells me that developers don't understand what causes long response times, because the cause, they're only tracking symptom. They're not tracking cause. Cause is resource, how they're using resources. So, I mean, that should be very telling. You say, well, we're going to have our developers do performance testing. If they knew performance well, they wouldn't be introducing performance issues to begin with.
Let's give the developers a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that maybe some of them understand more than just response times.
Yes.
Is JavaScript, can't we just take the same, if we want to know more and we want to build on top of it like we could with C, couldn't we just do the same thing with a JavaScript domain scripting language and add the features and functionality that we want just like we could with C?
It's a highly interpreted language. It's not designed to be run as a general purpose programming language.
So what about the efficiency of the language itself? As you said, it's interpreted.
It's highly interpreted.
Compiled.
The JavaScript compiler, and it's the ECMA script compiler, ECMAScript compiler, inside of a web browser. And there are a lot of things that we can say that are very positive about JavaScript. It's not highly typed language. It's very friendly for new programmers, and in many respects, it has displaced BASIC as the first language used for computer programming purposes.
I understand your viewpoint, and I agree. And what I'm now concerned about is how do we educate vendors, load testing tool vendors, and the people who are doing the testing, developers, performance testers. How do we convince them that there's still a need for a low-level language like C, and JavaScript isn't the only answer?
I think we have to go back to the foundation of how we add value in performance testing and in performance engineering. You know, the reason why they were able to deliver significant value is because they collected all the data points that were necessary to analyze and find issues. Today, you have a whole lot of tools that are unitaskers. You have load throwers, you have monitors, you have analysis tools, you have reporting agents, but they all exist independently of one another. I don't have I'm just going to pull out one tool and replace it with one tool. I'm going to pull out one tool and replace it with a minimum of 3 tools, maybe as many as 5 or 6 tools. That's got to be fixed. I'm not quite sure how to fix that other than to rant and rave about where value is added and allow people who are evaluating tools to begin to understand why they're having problems with value.
Right.
And hopefully that regrounds that piece. So once you've regrounded that, then becomes the issue of how do I produce the highest quality data going into the system. I can either get it out of production, or if it's pre-production, I've got to reproduce it and reproduce it in the same way that is being reproduced by the end user. Even in the JMeter universe, a lot of time you see people testing, all they do is call the top level URL. They don't call all the assets on the page. Why? Because JMeter is not a browser and doesn't operate like a browser. It doesn't run those threads in parallel. And as a result, you're not capturing the data necessary to understand if you have an issue that's at the web tier. You're not capturing enough data in order to analyze, do I need to change my cache model? Do I need to add more web tier items? Because the load associated with those fixed assets, which have not been requested, is simply absent. You got lower quality data.
I propose this on this episode of the Performance Tour, that we reach out to vendors, we reach out to some of the top influencers around performance testing and see if we can get them all together, see if we can get them talking somehow, see if we can come up to some kind of resolution that not only addresses the monitoring you're talking about, but also the languages, not just one, but the languages that should be used in certain aspects of testing, for whether it's a developer running a straight API test and doesn't care about the GUI versus other protocol scopes. What should it be? Can we agree to some kind of a standard?
Many of you have been wondering, how do you make the Performance Tour look so professional on video? Well, it's definitely not me. It's because I have a great group of people to work with behind the scenes. One of those people is Luke Taylor, and he's my editor for this show. I wanted to introduce you to him to kind of show you a little bit of behind the scenes of how this all works. So I brought Luke into the Perfmobile as well.
Okay, everybody, I've got a very special guest on the Performance Tour on the road segment with me today. The person who is in this vehicle is my camera aficionado, my producer, my director. He's the person who makes the Performance Tour look as good as it does on video, and I'm so happy that we connected to do this. Luke, welcome to the show.
I'm usually on the other side.
That's
so
right. Tell our audience a little bit about how we got together and what you do on the show.
Yeah, so I guess we've been doing the show together for 2 years, which is crazy because it doesn't feel that long. We got connected through a mutual friend. It was kind of right around the time where, well, I'm not going to say the word for advertising reasons, but that thing that happened about 2 years ago that everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
But yeah, we got connected, started working on the show, and man, it's just snowballed.
Luke, how much do you know about performance testing and performance engineering?
Prior to 2 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing.
Didn't know anything about it. Now, you could probably pass the test, the certification, right?
I've picked up all the buzzwords. I have. Well, what's funny is actually if I decided in any way, shape, or form to join the industry of development or whatever it may be, I would have an immediate bias towards performance engineering, just because.
All right, so that leads me to my real question, which is, prior to getting involved in this, and then you saw what I was trying to do with this show, what was your first reaction to this?
I am always a fan of when people in their respective industries try and distill that information and educate not only the people within their industries, but the general public about what they do. I'm a huge fan of that because that's really how I learn the best.
Well, I'm so glad that you get it and I think now we've put out enough content that most people who have at least seen the show a couple of times, they understand or the goal of the show is not to get into the weeds of tech, because there's plenty of videos that you can watch on YouTube or wherever about that. This is trying to take something like performance testing and engineering, raise the visibility to an audience that some would not even give it a second thought of looking at, and providing education and entertainment, and just maybe sometimes being completely off the wall weird to get people's attention. And was look, now this is crazy stuff, but let's watch it for 5 more minutes and see if he does anything else weird. And maybe at that point they'll get, oh, I see, I know kind of what performance testing is now, and hey, it's kind of valuable. Why don't I hear about this anymore? So I guess one thing that I'm hoping has struck a chord is that people understand how underserved this particular niche in IT is,
definitely,
and how special it is.
What's actually really interesting about performance engineering as it pertains to other disciplines and other fields, even in filmmaking, what I do, there's always those roles that get looked over and get maybe passed off as not important or not relevant anymore when they absolutely are. So yeah, it's just a good reminder.
I'm sure that after editing all these different episodes, you've heard some themes or you've heard some statements multiple times pop up where we repeat ourselves, like old geezers. But if there's one thing, just having to had listened to this over and over again, not knowing anything before, having edited over 20 episodes, if somebody asked you something about performance testing, performance engineering, what's something that pops into your mind that you might say that sounds like you're in the...
I think it would mainly just be the lingo. Like, again, 2 years ago, you would say, what is a SRE? I would have absolutely not. I'd be like, who knows?
Now you know enough about it to actually make fun of them.
Exactly. But hey, here's the thing. Lingo is the number one thing that gets you in with the community. Okay? All the different lingo, the different titles, that's really what communicates to people within the industry, hey, I know a thing or two. So
okay, so we can't end this interview without talking about the skits. Okay, now understand, I am from a different generation as Luke. Luke would be Gen Z.
Hey, I'm a millennial.
Okay, he's a millennial, whatever. But I grew up, 70s, 80s, early 90s was my time, my jam. So a lot of the skits that we do are based around some of that. And I've got to kind of catch up with the times, and I've got to appeal to some millennials and Gen Zs. So we're working on it. But what are those thoughts around the skits?
I think it's absolutely awesome. I mean, if you ask anyone, hey, if you could put yourself in one of your favorite music videos or TV show intros. I would not believe them as far as I could throw a rock if they told me no.
Right.
Like, that's just not true.
Right.
Everyone would want to be put in their favorite music video, or like, who wouldn't?
Right.
I would.
Right.
And so, and I've told you this before, but the level of quality that you put into essentially your jokes is fantastic. I absolutely love that. It's just, that's my type of humor. Like when you go above and beyond to make a joke.
Like the more serious you try to make it, the more funny it is.
Exactly.
Right? But anyway,
Definitely.
the skits that we do, I guess I look really weird doing this in the context of being a performance engineer, but I really enjoy doing it. It's some of the most fun that I have. Breaks me away from just doing the techno geeks stuff.
Yeah.
And it just lightens everything up.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you for being our great producer, director, whatever. And I look
Absolutely.
forward to many more episodes with you, Luke.
To the future.
So that's the first episode of the 2023 edition of the Performance Tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll join me each episode this year as we talk about performance engineering and a great end user experience for everyone by making applications perform better and make them more efficient. Yeah, we're also going to have some pretty funny parodies and stuff like that coming out too. So make sure to watch for it. For this edition of the Performance Tour, I'm Scott Moore, and thank you for joining me.